welcome to My Life. We're very pleased to have Gerald Lawson with us today. Gerald Lawson is a longtime member of the local American Legion, the VFW. He's been a life member of the VFW, and he's an officer there. And he's been on the committee that sells the poppies every year to raise funds for them. He's also on the Honor Guard. And not only that, and this is where I met Gerald, he comes into our schools every year and visits with the kids and answers questions about being in the service during a time of war. And he was over here at Oxford High School when I met him this year. So Gerald, thank you very much for being on our program. And another thing that you're active in is it with the VFW that has the homes for children?
Yes.
Okay. You're active in that part of that operation, so to speak. And
well, we put on programs every year, and plus every time we have a meeting at the VFW at our local, all of the officers and people that come for that are members of the VFW put a donation out, and that all goes towards the children's home and stuff too. Plus we donate monies, plus we do other things to help donate monies for that. But we sponsor one of the houses, and there's actually maybe 40 houses there, but they're from all the different states across the country that sponsors at least one house. And some people even more.
When you say 40 houses, how many kids actually are in each one of these houses, roughly?
Well, they vary. Just depends on how big the family is. And basically it's only for veterans that came back from wars or having a hard time or whatever, and we totally set them up in their housing and everything. We pay for everything, their schooling, their books, everything.
Right. These are for disabled veterans, is that correct?
Well, no, actually, it's as far as I know, it's for any veteran. Okay. I'm not certain if that's true or not, but that's.
But there's a special reason that you're concerned about this, isn't there?
Yeah.
And normally in this phase of the program, I ask people about where they were born, and we start with that. So let's look at that. Where were you born?
Well, I was actually born here in Oakland County at Pontiac, Michigan. But my life began then. But part of what I remember, I lived with some people at one time or another because my dad, I guess, was having a hard time raising us 4 kids. And he actually started putting us into different locations. Some of us, my sisters, basically went to homes with people that was raising them for a few years. I was actually put into a place they called the American Legion, and that was in Otter Lake, Michigan. So I spent 13 years of my life there. All of the functions and stuff that went on there, like I remember the special weekends we would have, like for Easter and stuff, because a lot of the American Legionnaires would bring up candy and do egg hunts and all that kind of stuff, and that's what I remember from there.
Did you ever know your mother?
Yes, actually I got to know my mother probably the last 20 years or 30 years, okay? Because back then I didn't remember her, didn't know who she was. I didn't even realize I had sisters until probably when I was 10 or so.
So was your mother out of the picture, both your mother and your father out of the picture?
My mother was in a state hospital.
I see.
Yeah. She, I don't know what happened there, even that's a controversial thing still, even today. But she got well, and my dad finally got us all back together and put us in a home in Royal Oak on 12 Mile Road.
What are your first memories of being in that system as a very young child? You said you went in when you were about 3 years old, I believe?
Had to be, probably. I mean, as far as I could remember, that had to be at least that. But I knew I was there for about 13 years.
Were you there with a lot of other kids?
Yes, yes, probably 150 or so, maybe 200.
So this was kind of an institutional type of place.
Well, it's, well, what did they used to call it?
Like a big dormitory.
Well, there was actually 5 houses, 5 huge homes that were like dormitories for us, okay? And then plus they had the main laundry, and all I remember is they used to drive up the hill with the bus and go around the circle and, you know, to pick us up for school.
So did you go to a local school up there near
Yes.
Otter Lake?
Yes, right in Otter Lake.
And was this a school where you were mixed in with other kids from the area?
Right, and that's why we were actually called the billet kids, and the local kids were called the Lake Orion kids. So anytime we had snow fights on the playgrounds and stuff like that, that's basically, it was the billet kids against the Lake, the Otter Lake kids.
Who usually won?
Well, it went back and forth, as you know, but, and that was a fun, yeah, it was a fun part of my life. I mean, basically, I didn't know anything else, you know.
Did you feel any stigma attached with being a billet kid?
Yeah, I liked that part. I remember the first time, actually, my brother-in-law, my oldest sister had gotten married, and she came up one time. That was many, many, many years later. But I remember he would take us, that's only when they first started allowing you to leave the American Legion to go visit or go do things. Before, you had to be at a certain room and visit with your parents and stuff. You couldn't go anywhere or do anything. And that's, you know, how they changed management and stuff, I guess, from that part.
So while you were there as a youngster, you did get to see your father from time to time?
From time to time, not very often. And matter of fact, I spent a lot of time, and, you know, hopefully nobody from the American Legion knows, but I actually spent a lot of time in the woods. So I would sneak off the schoolyard, and or the American Legion part of it itself. We had a playground, so I'd sneak off the playgrounds, go out in the woods and play, you know. And then when they called me, I mean, once in a great while, somebody would say, "Hey, Lawson, you got a visitor." And I go, "Uh-oh." So I had to go back. And,
well, we have to remember, it's not that you were a criminal trying to escape.
No, I mean,
this is your home, and you just,
right.
you know.
That's all I knew.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's all I knew.
As far as being in school was concerned during those very early years, did you feel kind of awkward being in that situation with these other kids who, you know, lived with their parents in homes and so forth?
No, not really. I didn't think anything of it. I mean, basically, you know, they were like we were the billet kids, and they were the town kids.
So everybody got along pretty well?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
very good.
Yeah.
We have to take a brief break right now, but
okay.
Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Everywhere you turn in Oxford is a new opportunity for fun. From the sandy beaches of Stony Lake and Scrifter to the many different sporting events and other recreational activities held at Seymour Lake Park. For those who like long walks, you can find yourself exploring the Pollyant Trail throughout Oxford's more scenic areas. And if it's seclusion you like, look no farther than Oakwood Lake Park. So bring your family or friends out to see one of our beautiful parks today.
Back on My Life with Gerald Lawson. Thanks again for being with us. We appreciate that. You were telling us about how you were in a home for kids with the VFW
No, it was actually American Legion.
With the American Legion, sponsored by the American Legion
Right.
from about 3 years old on. Did you ever know your grandparents?
Not until 13, 15, probably 15 or 16 years later, when I finally came out of the American Legion. My dad came and got us, got all my sisters together. I'm the only son in my family side, and I have 3 sisters. They were all living in different homes until probably 3 to 4 years before I left the American Legion. And I remember I was playing with on the playgrounds with my trucks. And one of the patrons, they used to call them, the matrons or patrons, that came up up to where I was playing, came up and says, "Jerry, you have some visitors." And I kind of stopped what I was doing. I looked up at her, and she pointed out 2 people standing there, 2 ladies. And he says, "I want you to meet your sisters."
How did that make you feel?
I looked at them, and I turned back and started playing with my toys, thinking to myself, what are sisters?
How old were you then?
Oh gosh, I don't know, probably 10 or maybe 10, 8, 9, 10, something like that. Yeah.
So starting then, did you start seeing them on a more regular basis?
Well, they basically, they lived in a different cottage than I did. So
Was it in that same complex?
same complex, yes, in the American Legion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was your father a veteran of World War II?
Yes, he was. He was a Navy sailor, a gunner on a
Yeah,
on
tell me a
ship.
little bit about that.
Well, basically, I tried to get my dad to open up to a lot of stuff, and I know he told me a lot of stuff, and that's why I try to tell a lot of veterans and people and relatives and stuff that when you have somebody that's a loved one that's in your family and they've been in war and stuff like that, try to ask them questions. Better yet, tape them, record them.
Everybody should
Because
interview their parents,
As
shouldn't
we
they?
get older, you're not going to remember that stuff.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened with my dad. I remember he was in the Navy. I remember he was on a ship. He was a gunner. He didn't like talking about the war. I know that. But, over the years, it took me a long time to get a lot of stuff out of him.
What we should mention here, and I'm only bringing it up because there's a good ending to this, was that I believe your dad had a problem that he was dealing with, and that's why you went into this system.
Yes, he came out of the war, became an alcoholic. And it was a sickness. He actually went to AAA for many years during the time that I was at the American Legion and stuff, and then finally got his life back together and put our family back together.
How did he explain that to you when he came to visit?
Well, actually, he apologized to me about it. And he says, "I'm sorry that I had to do what I had to do and I wasn't in your life most of the time." And I guess I just looked at him kind of dumbfounded, because I said, "Well, Dad, you don't need to apologize to me for anything." I says, "You did what you had to do to raise your family,
Sure.
whatever it took."
And your mother had some mental issues that she
Yes.
was dealing
Yes.
with.
Yes.
In fact, she was in a facility herself for a while.
Yeah, she was actually in the Pontiac State Hospital
Okay.
back when it was open.
What went through your mind about all this stuff when you were a young boy?
Didn't know anything about it when I was young. Didn't know anything about it until I was probably 15 or 16 years old when I came from the American Legion, billet home.
So as you progressed through grade school out there in Otter Lake, what kind of hopes and dreams did you have?
Well, basically I didn't know any different until after my family came and got me. My dad came and got me out and stuff. And when I came out into what we called civilian life out here, it was like a total different world. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have friends because they took me away from all my friends that
And
I
how
knew.
old were you at that point?
I was probably 13, maybe
Okay.
14 years old, if that.
Not quite ready to go into high school, or very close
No,
to it.
Yeah, I was in junior high when I came out. So basically I went to junior high, and I remember some of the things that used to bother me because I went to school, junior high and stuff, and I remember some kid was picking on somebody or something, and I stepped in on it. And the guy said he was going to knock me on my fanny, which I kind of looked at him kind of, dumbfounded, like what's that mean? Like I said, we were totally away from anybody that swore or anything. So basically, I didn't know anything about what was happening on civilian life. But basically, we stopped him from picking on this one kid.
What school
as it
was
ended
that?
up.
Where were you living
That was
at that?
actually Jane Addams in Royal Oak.
In Royal Oak.
Yeah.
So this was after you rejoined your mother and father, is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Tell me about that experience. How did that come about?
Well, like I said, basically when my dad got a house, came up to the American Legion, got me, went to all these different homes and got all of our sisters, and we all came together in this one house, except for my oldest sister Carol, because she was old enough now she could be married, and well, actually, in a few years later, she did get married. Okay.
When you were told this, were you welcoming of this news, or were you a little standoffish?
I was standoffish because I was confused. I'm going, why do I have to do this? I thought that was my home at the American Legion Children's Home. So it was kind of a shock to me until...
What did they say?
Who?
Your folks.
Well, basically that's why my dad even apologized many years later on.
Yeah.
That he's sorry that he had to do that. And from that period of time, I had more time to think about it.
So did it take you a long time to get back into that new system that you were in, or
Yeah.
to blend in with the new...
Yeah, I remember the first time when we moved in on the house on 12 Mile Road in Royal Oak. And I was outside playing, and some guy was over next door, the neighbor's house, and he was working on a car. And so I seen him there, and I walked over to the fence. Excuse me, and I said to him, I says, "Hello." No answer. "Hi, do you want to play?" And the guy had his head underneath the car. And he turned around and he said something to me. And he turned back around, doing what he was doing. And I just went, and I turned around and walked in the house, walked over to my dad, and I says, "Dad," I says, "I was trying to talk to this kid next door, and he said something to me that I didn't understand." And he says, "Well, what did he say to you, son?" And I told him. It wasn't nice.
Can we take a break here?
You bet.
We need to take just a break for just a moment, but we'll be right back.
Canine Stray Rescue does just that. Rescue stray dogs for new families. But they need your help. Become a volunteer at Canine Stray Rescue League of Michigan. Take dogs for walks, help them socialize with others, and help them get adopted. Fill out an application and help a family add a new member today.
Back with Gerald Lawson on My Life. Gerald, you were telling us about how shortly after you got out of the VFW system, or the American Legion system, and you rejoined your parents in Royal Oak, you tried to communicate with a neighbor who said some things to you that weren't very nice, and then you went and asked told your father about that. Why don't we pick up right there? What was your father's advice?
Well, basically, I didn't even know what he was saying because, like I said, I wasn't used to being away from the American Legion. And I asked my dad about it, and he said, well, what did he say to you? So I repeated what he said. And my dad just looked at me, and he says, you stay right here. I'll be right back. He walked outside. He went next door. I heard some hollering. And then he came back in, and he said, son, he said, what he said to you, I don't ever want you to repeat it. I says, okay, Dad. And that was the end of that. I mean, as far as that part of it goes. Then I actually met one of his brothers, younger kid, probably a week or two or so later. You know, that was, and I was kind of skeptical even to talk to him because I thought, well, maybe everybody talks like that, you know. So, anyways, I had become friends with him, and then we started playing together in the neighborhood and stuff, and that was part of my growing up from that point.
So this would have been mid-50s in Royal Oak. You were about 13 years old, you said?
Yeah, I guess it would be.
Okay, so what high school did you end up going to?
Kimball High School.
Okay.
And then I went there for, I don't know, 3 years or whatever it was, and then I quit there. I actually quit school and started going to work full-time for my dad and stuff, you know. But then Vietnam came up, and
yeah. What are some of your fondest memories of those first months rejoining your parents?
Well, like I said, I went through a lot of different things, and then as I learned to get used to them and know them, and actually my mother was very open with me and stuff. She, you know, she just, I knew her as a mother, as I remember now, because when she was in the mental state of it, you didn't know who she was. And that probably only stayed or only happened with her probably for a couple of years, because I remember her, she was well enough to actually work at a home that was right around the corner from there, that she took care of other people and stuff. And she had to know what she was doing to do that. Mm-hmm. Okay, but I guess that only lasted a few years that I remember. Mm-hmm. And then she just became quiet and, you know,
when all was said and done, what was your feeling towards your parents? Did you respect them for the decision they made about you and your sisters? Or did you not feel so good about that?
No, I always respected my mother did. I guess I was taught to do that.
Sure.
So, yeah, I always respected my mom.
They gave you a good background in the American Legion, didn't they?
Yes. Yeah. And then as time went on and Vietnam came up and I was old enough and they were drafting people left and right, I felt that it was my responsibility, because my dad served in World War II, that it was my responsibility to the United States to do that too, to my country.
Were there any other thoughts as you were going through high school of what you wanted your future to be?
No, basically I didn't have it really any direction. I was enjoying music and stuff and running around, and 17, 18 years old, chasing girls, of course.
How was school going for you?
Pardon?
How was school going for you?
I was doing okay. I mean, I was holding my own, but I wasn't doing A's and B's or nothing. You know, it's probably D's and C's. But I've always, not until I got married and figured, well, you got to do something to raise a family and stuff. And then I went back to college.
What'd your dad do for a living?
He was actually a mason.
Really?
Yeah. And that's how I got into construction with him.
Was that while you were in high school or afterwards?
Well, it was actually when did I start with him? In junior high school. I actually started with him in junior high school. In the summertime. It was something for me to do, I guess, for my dad to keep me out of trouble and stuff, and I guess it worked, so.
So was that something you became interested in?
Well, I didn't, he actually wanted me to take over the business, which was Lawson Construction. And I told him I didn't want to do that. I says, I see a lot of people that have using their brain to, have a living and stuff, and instead of their back. I says, I think I should go to school.
You'd like to try that?
Learn something, yeah. And that's what I did, eventually, yeah.
Okay, so in your mind, how did the service blend into this mixture here? Was it an impediment in your mind, or was it an opportunity?
No, it was probably an impediment because I didn't realize that, all I knew is that they were drafting people left and right. I didn't pay attention to why they were drafting people or the war or any of that stuff. I didn't pay any attention to it. And all I knew is that my country was going to call us, and it was my time to serve. So, okay, I went with open arms.
Yeah, what choice did you have?
So I actually had a job with my girlfriend at a refrigerator factory up in Battle Creek. And I took a leave of absence there because I got a letter from the draft board that says report to your draft board, and I said, I'm gone. That's it, I'm gone. So I took a leave of absence from them, came all the way down here, met with my the re-up guy, or the guy from the office there, and he said, okay, Lawson, he said, well, we'll call you. I said, excuse me? He said, we'll call you. And I said, what, you're not going to draft me right now? And he said, no. I said, well, how long? And he said, well, it could be a couple days, could be a couple of weeks, or even a couple of months. And I goes, thinking to myself, well, what am I going to do? I can't go back. And so I'll just join. So
you volunteered?
Yeah, I volunteered. I actually volunteered for 3 years. It was actually another year. I said, well, what's the difference, So.
How did your parents feel about that?
My dad was scared. Yeah, especially when I told him I was in infantry. Yeah, he was very scared about that.
And your mom?
Her too. I mean, what she knew about anything, you could talk to her about stuff, but a lot of times she didn't know what it meant or what it is. So, but she knew I was in the service, and she knew Dad told her that I was going off to war, which I think she was even a little bit confused about that, but,
I want to back up for just a second about your high school experience in Royal Oak,
Okay.
But I'm being given the signal that our time is up, so I guess I better wait till the next segment of our talk here to get into that. Okay. I really appreciate you being with us. We're going to have a second episode with Gerald Lawson to talk about the rest of his life experiences, including Vietnam. So please join us next time. Thanks for looking in.
Hi, I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Terry Stiles. Did you know that Charter Channel 191 and AT&T Channel 99 are the only television stations you can find all the events and news just for you?
Oxford News This Week is your news closer to home. Catch us right here weekdays at noon, 6:30 and 11 p.m. and weekends at noon and 11 p.m. See you there.
Don't miss what's going on in your local government meetings. Watch Elgin Nichols and Dave Kinney on Minutes by Minute. Airs Monday through Friday, 7 a.m., 11:30 a.m., and 11:30 p.m., where they add a touch of humor to local politics.